folks? Eric Roy here with Ruben Kihuen. We're getting your Friday morning, first day of Labor Day weekend. Started off with a bang. Ain't that right, Ruben?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
All right. Ruben Kihuen, one of my good friends for a long time, former member of Congress, House of Representatives of the United States of America, here with us today. Ruben, first thing I want to ask you is, how are you making these gains? You are 20 pounds bigger than the last time I saw you. What is going on?
Listen, I was joking with Eric when I first came in. Everybody was watching us. Hello. I walked in and I saw this guy and I saw his biceps. And I said, you know, what's going on here? Is this a radio show or is this Mr. Olympia that we're walking into?
Hey, keep talking. I'll take it all day, all right?
No, Eric, but in all seriousness, thanks for having me here. And congratulations on your new show. This is going to be a big hit in our community and desperately needed.
Thanks, buddy. So, first thing I want to talk about with you, Ruben, is a little bit about your background. I know you were born in Mexico. What part of Mexico?
Yeah, so I was born in Guadalajara.
Guadalajara, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And then you came to the United States, Las Vegas, when you were a child. So you're born and raised in Las Vegas here.
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much. I mean,
sorry, you were raised in Las Vegas. You weren't born.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm a native from this town. I mean,
yes,
I pretty much grew up here. But yeah, you're right, Eric.
Yeah.
So way before Ruben was a congressman and then all my political trajectory and what I'm doing now.
Yes.
I was this immigrant kid who came to the United States when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
And like many immigrant families, my parents came to this country because they wanted to achieve the American dream. So I didn't choose to come to the U.S. My parents brought us here. And honestly, it's been the biggest decision and most important decision that my parents made because they wanted to see a future for their kids in America. I wanted to grow up just like you. I wanted to have the same opportunities that Eric Roy and every other American kid had.
Yes. And you accomplished much despite what may have been a more difficult background or upbringing than some others may have been provided. Tell me this. Let's talk about some of your accomplishments, Ruben. I know you were in the House of Representatives. How old were you when you were first elected to Congress?
Yeah, so this. I'm 40 years old now, Eric. And,
okay.
And
sorry,
I'm 40.
He hates to talk about that.
I'm 40, going on like 60.
Oh boy!
I've had such a long trajectory in the career of politics. Or more, I wouldn't say politics. It's more like public service.
Yes.
Right. Because when you're in elected office, you're doing a public service.
Yes.
You're not making a ton of money. You're working, many hours a day, and you're serving the public.
Yes.
But yeah, so when I was 18 years old, is when I decided to first volunteer in campaigns.
Okay.
My government class required to pass that class so I can graduate. So I graduated. I volunteered. Got extra credit. And then a few years later, I decided to run for office when I was 25 years old.
Okay.
But yeah, I got elected to the state assembly when I was 26.
Wow.
Ran for the state senate at 29.
Wow.
Got elected at 30.
Wow.
And then I ran for Congress at 35. Got elected at 36.
Good job. It's not easy.
I mean, and I say this, not to brag, but because I've been in this for a long time now. I've served at the state and federal level. I have a better understanding of the issues that are impacting Nevadans.
Sure you do.
And Americans. And so now, I work at a nonprofit. And all this knowledge that I was able to gain in public service, now I'm able to apply it to help other people, especially right now with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay. And your nonprofit, tell me about it. What is it and what services does it provide?
Yeah, so I currently work at the Immigrant Home Foundation. So after serving my term in Congress, which was from 2017 to 2019, I came back to Las Vegas and I wanted to continue serving the community.
Okay.
I didn't know at the time that the pandemic was going to happen. All I knew is that I wanted to give back. I wanted to continue in public service.
Yes.
And so I came back for a weekend. I was in Washington, D.C., and I came back for a weekend. I volunteered at this nonprofit, helping dreamers apply for their DACA.
Okay.
And the opportunity came up. The executive director said, "Ruben, are you interested in working for us?
Yes.
We'd love to have you here, and we'd love to have you continue helping the community." And to be honest with you, I had never worked in a nonprofit before.
Okay.
But it was very aligned with my values, my morals, and what I wanted to do as an elected, as a public official.
Right.
And so I started working with them, and so now I work at the Immigrant Home Foundation. It is a nonprofit that is dedicated to helping undocumented immigrants.
Okay.
people who are residents become U.S. citizens.
Okay.
And then also victims of domestic violence.
Okay.
So if there's been any victims of domestic violence, they qualify to apply for a U visa.
Okay.
If they cooperated with law enforcement.
All right.
So we help these victims of domestic violence get their visas. And recently now, we're going to start doing an educational campaign on the COVID-19 to educate the Latino community how to take precautions and to not get infected. But it's very important work. And, honestly, Eric, I did, none of us knew that this pandemic was going to happen.
Right.
So for me, the opportunity to be able to give back and be able to help the community is obviously very humbling.
I like it, Ruben. And then about the legislation I'm trying to pass myself, animal rights legislation. We can count on your support for that, Ruben.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it, buddy.
And as a matter of fact, Eric and we actually met, I want to say almost a year ago, and he reached out to me and said, "Hey, Ruben, as you know, I love animals. I want to do everything possible to protect animals." And I got to give credit to Eric. I got to give credit to you because you did reach out to me. And you said, Ruben, you were in the state legislature for 10 years.
Right.
You were a congressman. What can we do to get this bill passed?
Yes.
So Eric and I spoke extensively. He got his team on the phone. And now it looks like this idea is now going to be an actual proposal for legislation, which eventually, if the next legislative session, not if, when the next legislative session takes it up, it might become a law.
Appreciate that, Ruben.
So tell me a little bit more about that, Eric. Tell me tell our audience what the bill will do.
So essentially, the idea behind the bill is to enhance the criminal punishments that are associated with severe or horrific animal abuse. So currently, how it stands in Nevada, if you injure an animal intentionally, there's a wide variety of ways that can happen and does happen regularly. In Nevada, you get charged. If that happens, you get charged, Ruben. All it is right now is a Category D felony, which is good that it's a felony. A lot of states, it's a misdemeanor still. Nevada, at least, it's a Category D felony. The thing about it is Category D felony, although it sounds harsh, the reality is once a criminal case typically goes to court, essentially there's a plea bargain, and usually what the perpetrator of the crime pleads out to is a reduced crime, which in this case would be a misdemeanor. So let's say this guy, John Doe over here horrifically abuses an animal. The likelihood of him serving any prison time, very unlikely. It could happen, but very unlikely. He may not even spend any time in jail. The criminal repercussions are far too weak. So what we're trying to do is introduce new legislation that'll essentially enhance those punishments. Preferably with that type of crime, instead of being a Category D felony, it would be a Category C felony. That's just a more harsh sentencing than on a Category D. That's what I would like. Ultimately, I prefer Category B, but we have to make baby steps here. That's what we're trying to do. First time I've ever tried to introduce a bill, and that's why I came to Ruben. I'm like, Ruben, how do I do this, And he basically explained it to me. The concept is not that unusual or difficult, you might say, depending on the bill, of course. But essentially, you've got to just get members of our local Congress, the Assembly, and the Senate united, and with enough votes, your bill can pass and it'll go to the governor for signature. And so we're hoping, with respect to our bill, that we don't get a ton of pushback. The good thing is, no matter what side you're on, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. If you're an animal lover, we hope that you're going to support the bill. So that's what we're doing, Ruben.
And Eric, like I said, I commend you for that. And you and I know Kaylin and Myra, your whole team.
They're doing great too.
They're doing amazing work. And, and I told Eric this. I said, look, the legislative session meets until 2021, February of 2021. Mm-hmm. He was contacting me in 2019. Okay, almost literally a year and a half in advance. But that's how you get things done. Yep. You got to start working on them, especially when you got to convince 63 legislators, which is 21 senators, 42 assembly members. Mm-hmm. But I've always said that it is our responsibility to, as leaders in our community, to protect children,
yes,
seniors, and animals,
yes,
which are the most vulnerable, beings in this planet.
Mm-hmm.
That is our responsibility. And so for me, Eric, I commend you for this. I don't know if this is going to lead to you running for office someday, but,
yeah, right.
You know, I don't know about you guys, but maybe Eric Roy for like, you know, state assembly or state senate doesn't sound like a bad idea.
Yes. I gotta wait a few years though, but yeah, I think it would be definitely cool to get into politics at some
Absolutely.
sometime. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
We need people. You know, if anything, right now, if you look at our Congress right now in our legislature, you see a lot of common folk. Not that you're common, right? I mean,
I'm a country boy from Idaho, but let's not get it wrong.
You're this high-profile attorney here in town, you know, very well loved and respected.
Yeah.
But you know, we need some average folks. You got people like, and again, regardless of how you feel about her, you got people like AOC, right? Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. She's a former bartender, right? Like my brother.
Yeah.
And now she happens to be a U.S. Congresswoman, not just a Congresswoman, a rising star in the party. They're talking about her being a future president.
Okay.
Whereas just 2 years ago, she was a bartender, right?
I had no idea. That's crazy.
And by the way, I love bartenders, right? I mean, I think I know a lot of them who have master's degrees, bachelors, but they love being They love bartending.
Okay.
But she's now a congresswoman, a rising star, and she spoke
wild.
at the Democrat National Convention. So that could be you.
Yes. Okay. I appreciate it.
So you heard it here first. Eric Roy for something.
Yes.
In 2024.
In the running. 2034. Get ready. So some other things I wanted to talk to you about is you'd mentioned COVID-19. I was actually reading last night the amount of COVID cases in Nevada are declining massively from their peak, which was I think a couple months ago. It's amazing how the positive cases have really declined. That's good news, I think. Ultimately, I'm hoping that our economy opens and reopens, not only in the state but also in the country. Right now, as you know, economically, financially, the country's been hit very hard. The government is doing its best to stimulate the economy and get the economy running, but it is obviously a difficult task. So we're hoping the economy opens up soon. What are your thoughts on that, Ruben?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very, very encouraging that we're seeing here in Nevada a decline in infections, in deaths, in hospitalizations.
Yes.
Obviously all of that is really good. The downside, though, is that we have about 300,000 people who are unemployed right now in the state of Nevada.
True.
Our unemployment rate's at about 15%, which is as high as it was during the recession. What is it?
2008?
2008 and 9. And so, unfortunately, I'm sure there's a lot of people watching us right now who are probably watching from home, because they're unemployed. And so we just want to let you know, to hang in there. Look, times are tough. It's not easy right now, but we have been here before. We have been in a recession before. We have been in a depression before. Remember back in the 1920s, we had the Spanish flu, which literally put the entire country shut down. We recovered from that with less technology and less medical advancements. Then we had the recession of the 1930s. Then we had all the wars, Vietnam War, all the other wars that have happened since. Then we had the recession of 2009. We always recovered. We are a resilient country, and we will recover again. So hang in there. There's help coming. Yep.
And the cool thing about that, you mentioned what we're going through right now. We just got hit with a recession, right? Okay, sounds terrible. There are some positive perspectives to be taken from recessions. For example, Ruben, you mentioned the Spanish flu. I think it was 1919, 1920. A lot of people died. It was essentially a very similar circumstance to what we have today. It's called a black swan event. It's unforeseeable. It happens, causes economic downfall, disaster, distress. But the cool thing is, what happened after this, the flu of 1919 was the Roaring Twenties.
Right.
After that happened, you have a massive recession. What happens is the economy becomes more efficient. The inefficient aspects of the economy essentially, unfortunately, die off or disappear, it seems unfortunate when it happens, but what it ultimately leads to is greater efficiency in the marketplace, which can lead to a period of economic prosperity following the recession. So I think that's what we've got to look forward to. We thought 2020 was going to be the year that was good, but I think it's going to be the years that follow 2020 that are going to be real good for a lot of folks. So let's stay optimistic.
Exactly. And you know what, Eric? Not only that, but if you look at 2009, and I think most of you who are watching were alive in 2009, we had an unemployment rate that almost hit 20%. 70% of homes here in Nevada were upside down.
Yep.
A lot of people lost a record amount of homes, due to foreclosure.
Yep.
And what happened just a few years later, right? We hit one of the strongest economies that we've ever had.
Yes.
In Nevada history and in our U.S. history.
Yes.
So we will recover.
Yep.
I mean, it's tough, and I know it's easier said than done. But if you're unemployed right now, and you're on unemployment or you're looking for a job, just know that we have been here before. We will, but things will get better. I'm confident our economy is going to get better. What I am concerned about, though, is obviously the spending right now at the federal level.
Yes.
The deficit, the debt that we have. But again, if you talk to the experts, most of the experts right now, the economic experts all around the world, the economists, are saying that this spending that we're making right now is necessary. We're investing money in jobs, right? In the PPP loan, for example, the Paycheck Protection Program. Yes. We've already spent over $1 trillion in that to help businesses stay afloat and keep jobs alive. So some spending is necessary, but I think in long term, we're going to have to make a decision whether we want to be in this debt and continue having a deficit for so long, or do we want to get back to the prosperous years? You remember back when Bill Clinton was president, we actually had a surplus.
Yes.
In the first time in a long time.
Yeah, like a great point. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I know the economists say, look, if there's any time to borrow money, essentially to infuse money into the economy, when you do it is during a recession. Economists agree on that. So yeah, 100% stimulate the economy with some stimulus. But my issue is that we've been borrowing in years when we haven't had recessions.
Correct.
And that's unnecessary. So now we're at a state where when we need it, we have to borrow. But unfortunately, we've already borrowed really too much. So I think it's not good. We need to cut back on the borrowing. National debt for the United States, I believe, is about 25 trillion, maybe 26 trillion. Yeah. A huge amount of money. Maybe people are like, okay, that's not a big deal. But when you look at how much we spend just to pay the interest on that debt per year, it's massive. And it's only getting bigger with each and every year because we never touch the principal. We never reduce the principal. So the principal continues to grow, which means the amount of interest we pay annually is only increasing. And
it's similar to, if sort of people, yeah. I mean, look, we I don't want to get over our heads, right? I mean, it can make it very, very simple. So for example, if you have a credit card,
yes,
right?
Same.
I mean, let's say you owe $20,000.
Same.
If you continue making a payment every month and your interest rate is high, all you're doing is just paying off the interest, but the actual principal is still there. So it's similar at the national level.
Yes.
But think about this: we're at a $25 trillion debt, and it's going to continue growing as long as we're here. But again, we're also the most resilient, the richest country ever in the history of the world.
Yes.
We will get out of this, but it's going to take true leadership, though, from the presidency all the way to Congress, to the local governments and the state governments. It's going to take a lot of work.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting to talk about, the United States, who we are, who we've been, where we are as far as being a superpower, a financial superpower goes. The United States is still an amazing country. Its GDP, I believe, is still the highest in the entire world, above China's, which I think is number 2. So the United States does kill it. It does very good. And our industries, particularly our companies, that are in the United States, like these big companies, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, these other big stalwarts, they're American companies and they're dominating the global economic scale. So the United States is doing great still, and I appreciate that.
But we got to continue being careful, though, because China and Russia are very quickly gaining ground around the world.
Yes.
You see China right now, they're rich. They got plenty of money. The downside is that because due to the pandemic, they're not able to sell their goods or export their goods. And so, that impacts the whole world, not just China. But again, we got to be very careful because if we want to continue being the global economic power that we've always been, we have to get our deficit and our debt under control once this pandemic is over. Again, and what I say about the pandemic, Eric, is that this is a temporary storm.
Yeah.
Right. I always compare it to a storm outside. There's a day when you wake up and it's cloudy and it's windy and it's raining and it's hailing and it's the ugliest day you've ever been through. And then you got to drive through it. And then there's fog and it's a horrible day. But what happens eventually? That storm turns into a cloudy day only. The rain stops, the fog goes away.
Rainbows.
Right. Yes.
Yes.
And then the sky opens up and you see the sun.
Boom.
And then it's a beautiful 74 degree day, and it's amazing again, right?
Yes.
Same thing with this pandemic. We're going through a storm. I believe that we already went through the worst of it, and then things are going to get better. Things are going to get better.
Couldn't agree more. You mentioned China and Russia. What are your you mentioned that China is growing financially. It's becoming a dominant world player. An interesting point that I think on that. You know, we have this issue with China. We say they're infringing on trade, patents, trademark law, this type of thing. They have been for a long time. It's nothing new. But the interesting part about China is it's grown. It's gone from being a very third world country to a very first world country in such a short period of time that the level of sophistication differs across different parts of their country. So, for example, you look at their legalities, their legal legalities, trademark law, copyright law, patent law, those types of things, which the United States would take very seriously. In China, they don't. They're very behind the times with regard to that specifically. And so that's what, you know, the United States has been doing. We're saying, look, if you're not going to operate on an equal playing field as the rest of the players in the global market are operating, then we're not going to play with you. I don't disagree with it. In fact, I do agree with it. And I think China will evolve. It'll realize at some point in time that it doesn't make financial sense to pursue this idea they have that they don't have to abide by copyright, patent, and other laws that protect intellectual property. So I think it will evolve. That country will evolve. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I completely agree with you. I just think that the fact that they're still a communist country, right?
Yes, true.
They're and same thing with Russia, right?
True.
They're dictatorships.
Yeah.
Look, as much as I may disagree with President Trump, and I know that's not a political show, but I disagree with President Trump on many issues. We still got to appreciate the fact that we live in a democracy, in a republic where people can still elect their leaders.
Yes.
You know, the American people, the Electoral College, went with Donald Trump. He won more electoral votes, so he went on to become president.
Yes.
We respected that, right? Yes. If Joe Biden wins this upcoming election, I would hope that my Republican friends respect the fact that he's president, and vice versa, right?
Right.
But we respect each other's views, and sometimes we may disagree publicly and loudly.
Yep.
But we still have the ability to vote in America. Whereas in other countries like Russia and China, if God forbid you say something against their dictator, you end up murdered somewhere, or in the bottom of the ocean somewhere.
Well, and I think in Russia, didn't they recently, if I'm not mistaken, I think they amended their laws essentially so that Vladimir Putin can now serve a lifetime appointment, right?
Right.
So there's no term limit on Vladimir Putin.
Not only that, but I mean, if you decide to run against the leader, or if you decide to be an opposition leader, you
don't go getting coffee at Starbucks. I
was going to say, you end up being poisoned, or you appear somewhere. So again, as divided as our country may be right now, and it is disappointing because at one point we were united as a country. Sadly, though, sometimes it takes a tragedy to unite our country. Right after the September 1 shooting, October 1 shooting, after the September 11th, attacks on our country. We all united, and it was one country.
For sure.
But again, as much as we're divided now, we are still a republic where you can elect your leaders, right?
Yes.
You can still show up to the polls and say, you know what, I don't like Donald Trump, I'm going to vote against him, without losing your life.
Yep.
And so that's a beauty. Regardless of what's going on right now, we are still the United States of America. I'm still proud to live in this country. We have a lot of issues, but put it this way: we're a family, right? Think about your family.
Yep.
My family's not perfect. Your family's not perfect. We have internal family issues.
Yes.
But does that mean that you don't love them?
No.
Absolutely not, right? You still love them. You still want to work things out with your family. Same thing with the United States. We might be divided, but we're still one family.
Couldn't agree more. The United States, we're so fortunate. Just add on to that, I mean, like just traveling generally, you start to realize how much the world is third world, and the reality is that the reason why most the world is third world is because the third world suffers from corruption primarily. That's why the economies never grow. The money usually ends up at the top, and it doesn't really end up in the hands of the people. So we're fortunate in the United States. We don't have rampant corruption historically, and we have democracy, and we should be thankful for that.
Well, and we obviously still have issues, right? You have the trickle down economics, right? That certain politicians. The Republican Party particularly, they feel that the richer that you make the rich, that the more the worker is going to benefit. Not necessarily, right? So, for example, these people make all the money, and somehow that's going to trickle down to the worker. Whereas the Democratic Party has always said, no, you got to empower the worker so they can do well, so they can spend more money on the economy, so then the businesses can do well, and the top can do as well. So it's a win-win situation. But again, regardless of where you are, Republican or Democrat, again, we can agree to disagree in this country. I'm a proud Democrat. You know, I was a Democrat my entire career. I'm still a Democrat, and I still support Democratic candidates. But again, I have friends that are Republican. And you know what? We sit down and have dinner, have respectful conversations. We agree to disagree. But I know that I'm not going to get killed or murdered because I spoke out against President Trump or because I said something bad. And that's the beauty of this country.
100%. And couldn't agree more. Yeah, and just like to add on to that, I think what people need to start doing is getting away from saying, people get so caught up, I'm red, I'm blue, I'm Democrat, Republican. Come on, decide things on the issues. Understand the issues that are associated with each platform. Decide what issues you agree with. Because, I mean, I can tell you for me personally, I've got, let's say there's 8 big issues that are decisive issues between Republicans and Democrats, right? All those partisan issues. Democrats feel one way, Republicans feel another. If I look at all 8 of those issues, about 4 of those I agree with the Republican Party. Another 4 I agree with the Democratic Party. So let's start looking at issues and making educated decisions. People get like behind a party, they don't really understand the issues, and they're almost getting violent about it, but maybe they should accept the commonalities that most people have with both parties, and sometimes they don't know it.
That's absolutely right. And you know, we got to also remember that when we talk partisan politics, right? I mean, or if when you approach somebody and they say, oh, I'm a Republican, there are a lot of people that just shut down. Oh, I don't want to talk to you.
Yes.
But honestly, when you sit down and talk to somebody who you feel or you think that you don't agree with just because of their party affiliation, I guarantee you that if people were to sit down and just have a civilized conversation without yelling at each other, without accusing each other of racism or being too liberal, just sit down and have a conversation. I guarantee that you're going to find a lot more common ground than you think.
For sure.
And I think that's just what it doesn't really happen nowadays. Look, I served in Congress for 2 whole years. I completed a whole term in Congress. I was there. I saw how divided our country is. And look, there was a couple times where I went and had dinner with a couple of my Republican friends, or I went on a congressional trip led by a Republican congressman, and I would take heat from my party.
Yes.
Say, Ruben, what are you doing? Why are you hanging out with the Republicans? And I said, you know what? This is how things are supposed to work.
That's democracy.
But then again, my bills will pass, right? Next thing you know, my bill will get a hearing because they were in control, right? Especially if Republicans are in control, you got to work with them.
Yep.
Again, not saying that you got to compromise your beliefs and your values. You can still keep your beliefs and values, but you got to be able to sit down and have a conversation. Say, listen, Congressman, I don't agree with you, but let's find some common ground. Let's find an issue that we can both work on.
Yes.
An issue that you're working on, Eric, the animal rights that you were talking about. I guarantee you that you're not going to find a Republican or Democrat that says, I hate animals.
I hope not.
Right? I mean, that could be
If I do, it's over.
And that could be an issue that could bring the legislature together in the next legislative session. You guys can both talk about, how we want to protect animals. And so again, you can find issues that we both can agree on and find some common ground and get something done. But right now, people are like, oh, you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, I'm not going to talk to you. That's just not right.
Couldn't agree more, my friend. That will conclude our day's show. I want to thank Mr. Kihuen for coming in today. He's awesome. Good guy all around. He's spent the majority of his lifetime dedicated to helping people in Las Vegas, Nevada. So if you ever meet the guy, greet him and give him a big thank you. All right.
Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate the conversation and the invitation.
Thanks for coming, partner.